Today on CityCast Chicago, more than 500 people have been shot and killed in Chicago this year, and these stories often get reduced to statistics. But all of these people had folks who loved them, whose lives would change forever after a gun was fired. So we're going to hear a couple of stories from Chicagoans who have lost loved ones to gun violence, to hear how these deaths go so far beyond just the numbers. It's Monday, December 9th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Before we jump into it, let me just first acknowledge the elephant in the room. These topics are extremely hard to talk about. They're hard to listen to, but they are extremely important. And I'm so very grateful that we can have these tough conversations here at CityCast Chicago. I am listening to a lot of these stories for the first time as we're recording. So as you're listening, please take time for yourself when and if you need it. I also want to acknowledge that this is the first day of our end of the year membership campaign. So all week, you're going to be hearing me ask you to become a member at membership.citycast.fm. And becoming a member essentially means you get to support conversations like this one, where we hear from real Chicagoans about real Chicago problems. I know it can be easy to feel disconnected and hopeless, especially when these national headlines come across your feed that really stereotype and bastardize Chicago. And that's why we really like to focus on what's really happening in our neighborhoods, on our streets, and in our communities. And your membership really helps us do it. Trust me. Having over 900 plus conversations over the last 4 years has been the joy. And I know that the only way we can keep doing this for years and years to come is by you joining alongside us. For as little as $8 a month or $80 a year, you can invest in local journalism that connects you to your fellow Chicagoans, makes you feel closer to this city, hopefully gives you some cool things to do along the way. And you can sign up. It is very easy. Just head over to membership.citycast.fm. And as a little extra incentive, if you sign up this week, we heard the calls. We felt the love the last time we did this. So we rolling back out the CityCast Chicago tote bag again. That's membership.citycast.fm. I appreciate y'all letting me get that pitch out the way at the top of the episode, and for being here and being a part of CityCast Chicago. If you've already signed up to become a member, we see you. Thank you so much. All right, let me bring in our producer, Michelle Navarro, who's been spending time at the Trace's Survivor Storytelling Workshop. Michelle, welcome back to the mic.
Hey, Jacoby.
Michelle, can you tell all of CityCast Chicago, what is the Trace Storytelling Workshop?
Yeah, so the Trace is a news organization that investigates gun and gun violence in America. It's the only newsroom that solely reports on the country's ongoing gun violence crisis. Now, the Trace Survivor Storytelling Workshop is for Chicagoans who've lost a loved one to gun violence, a sibling, a child, a friend. They've applied to be here. They work with reporters and editors at the Trace. They help them craft their essays, which you can find linked in the show notes. Basically, they're sharing their story and tying it to a bigger theme or issue surrounding gun violence in the city. Over the course of several months, the participants have been meeting each other in these workshops, and they talk through what they've been through.
So take us to the room where this workshop is happening. Where are you and what's going on?
So we're all sitting around a conference table in the City Bureau office in Bronzeville. It's a Tuesday evening in October. This is their last in-person meeting.
Today is also my son's birthday, and I didn't want to come today, but I'm still pushing on.
That's Delphine. She's here to write about the two children she lost. But that's the way these conversations kind of go. Yes, they're here to write an essay that will be published, but it's also kind of like a support group. And for most of them, it's their first time writing about this.
Michelle, what was the energy like in the room when you went there? Are these people who like really know each other and now they're like in community with one another? Is this a place where people are just like really angry at maybe the city or their neighborhood? Like, what was it like to like sit in the room?
The people in the room have experienced this at different points in their life. Some people lost a loved one decades ago, and for others, just a few years ago. And so, despite what these people have experienced, they still have to wake up every morning, go to work, and just keep living. But I think when everyone comes into this space, you can feel the tension in the air. Everyone in here knows what it's like to go through this singular experience that I think a lot of people have experienced, but a lot of people probably never will. Crystal Paul's a journalist that's been meeting with the group on Tuesdays like this one, and she leads discussions.
I'm really impressed by how, first of all, y'all are here and willing to go through and face these things that, are oftentimes things you have to pack away just to exist on a daily basis, right? And you're pushing through that to make sure that you can tell the story because you see a purpose there. You see a hope there. And I know that when you are enmeshed in trauma, first of all, it's hard to call up those memories, period. That literally affects your brain, as we've talked about. But it's also hard to see the sort of window of hope, to even hope, and think, I can tell my story and that might change something. So just, I'm thoroughly impressed that you all decided that that's what you wanted to do.
Sure, I know you got to meet a few people throughout this process. Who's just maybe one person you met whose story really stuck out to you?
Yeah, my name is Estela Diaz. My son's name was Fernando Zadkiel Vega Diaz, but we always call him Zadkiel, but his second name. And he was amazing. What can I tell you? I'm the mom. I'm the mom. So, but he was, sparkly, brave. He was a very good son and a very good brother. He was the second. I have 5. He was the second. But I always know that I can count on him. He was like my right hand. So, yeah, he was everything to me.
Estela's son was shot and killed in the back of the Yards neighborhood in 2022. Of everyone in the room, she's the one who lost a loved one most recently.
He always wait for me when I get home on a long day, and he always asked me, "How was your day, Mom? Are you happy with your job?" All that kind of stuff. He's always. But the most thing I remember, my birthday, it's on January 5, and I born 11:35 in the nighttime. And he was the only one wait until that time to go to my room and say, "Happy birthday, Mom." So that filled my heart a lot.
Zadkiel was 18. He was a student at Muchin College Prep and was supposed to graduate the following spring. Now she carries around his blue book bag everywhere. And when she points to it, I try to imagine his life as a high schooler.
We fight a lot.
I mean, it's normal. You're the mom, right? He was a teenager. So of course you guys were going to be.
Yeah, but the thing is that when we fight, or I yell at him, he just walked away to his room like an hour, 2 hours. He came back and he looked at me like this. And I pretend I don't see him. And then he stands in front of me and says, "Hug?" And I say, "No, I want to hate you a little bit more. Go away." And he started laughing. He says, "Come on, Mom, hug." And I say, okay, hug, but go to your room. I want to hate you a little bit more, just a little bit more, 5 minutes more.
Can you take me back to that day when you found out?
Well, happened like in the movie. I never thought that things can happen in real life, because I was in my room waiting for him. It was 9 o'clock. And he sent me a text message saying, "I'm so sorry, Mom, I know it's late, but I'm going home." And I text him back, "Okay, be careful." 10 to 15 minutes later, I received a phone call from his cell phone. And immediately my chest, my heart started beating so fast. So I get up from bed and answer the phone. And I hear scream, people yelling, sirens. And for that moment, I thought something happened, and he called me to pick him up. But was a man who saying, "Are you Fernando's mom?" And I yelled, yeah, what happened? And he hung up. And I tried to call him back. You know, I tried, but nothing happened. And then I say, okay, Stella, leave the phone. Wait. So I leave the phone, and then another call came in. And this man says, your son received a shot in his chest. And I just like freeze, you know, and I start screaming. Where is he? Is he alive? And he says, I don't know, but the ambulance is taking him to the hospital. I'm going to send you the address so you can get there. So I ran out of my room. My ex-husband, he asked, where did you go? And I don't answer anything. I just run outside to the garage. I take the keys, and he following me. And he says, what happened? What's going on? And I said, someone shot Zadkiel. My cell phone started ringing again, and I answered, and it was a police officer saying, are you Fernando's mom? And I said, yes, I am the mom. And he says, oh, okay, your son has an accident. I say, I know. And I'm running to the hospital right now. We get to the hospital. We wait like 45 minutes. And the doctor told me, this is so hard to tell you, but your son don't make it to the hospital. And I immediately feel like my legs like jelly, like, you know, like the floor opened. And I start screaming and say, that is not true. He just called me. He just say, I'm going home, Mom. I don't believe it. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it's another kid. Maybe he has his ID, something. So they wait for me to calm down and tell me that I have to recognize the body. So we walk to another room. And I saw him. He was with a tube in his mouth. He just, you know, uncovered the face. And was 2 police officers guarding the body. And as soon as I saw him, I just ran. And they said, I'm so sorry, but you can't touch him. And I asked why. And they said, because he is a piece of evidence. And I told the officer, please, let me touch him. Please, you have a mom. And he looked at me and he says, I'm so sorry, but you can't.
By evidence, they mean that because this is a homicide, touching the body could cause them to lose fingerprints or trace fibers and can disrupt the process of presenting this evidence in court, which could jeopardize the case against any suspects. Essentially, Estela wouldn't be able to see her son anytime soon.
My son died on a holiday. So we have to wait until next Tuesday to go to the morgue. And I thought in the morgue they're going to let me be with him. But no, they just show me pictures of him. And they don't give me the body like 10 days after that. So I've been carrying that moment so hard, so deep in my heart, that they don't let me touch him for the last time. And I feel like it's cruel. The system is very cruel with us.
And can you tell us more about the investigation? What was that like for Estela? She talked about from the moment she was getting phone calls to the moment she gets to the hospital, she already feels disadvantaged in this sort of big attempt of her to try to navigate this system of policing in the hospital. And so what was like this investigation like for her?
So right after Estela identified her son, the detectives took her into a room to ask her questions. What was the last time she talked to him? Why was he where he was?
Because of his age and because of the place he died, they asked me if he was a gang member. They asked me to what he was doing over there at that time. Like, if I feel like those questions are make you feel that you're guilty because you let your son be there at that time. And she says, well, your son was in a wrong place in a wrong time. I have a son who's 16, but I don't let him go anywhere in the nighttime. So they make me feel like it's my fault that my son is dead right now because another person decided to shoot him and kill him. So you're telling me right now, as a mother, I fail?
I can't count on both hands. I couldn't count on both of our hands the number of times I've heard this from family members and parents who've had to sit minutes, hours after finding out a loved one was shot, finding out a loved one was killed, and are immediately sort of grilled under the lights about their failings. For an officer to sit in front of you and tell them what they would or wouldn't allow for their kid, we know that at times authorities come in here with their own story, with their own assumptions and their own stereotypes based on the neighborhoods they're in, based on the race of the young person or the person who was killed. What was that story that they were telling, and what did they end up finding out in their investigation?
So Zadkiel was at his girlfriend's house. He had just came from a job fair downtown. And when he was leaving his girlfriend's house, someone drove by and fired shots. Like I mentioned, this happened in back of the yards, which is an area where even if he wasn't gang affiliated, police would assume someone else was. These assumptions came up again and again in the questioning. So of course, Estela questioned herself. Like, maybe he was into something she didn't know about. But she told police then, and then she told me, she knows her son. And it wasn't until this year, 2 years after the shooting, that she finally gets the full story.
Yeah, I found out on September when they called me and said that they catch the guy.
And she learns that she was right. According to the prosecutors and police, the person they caught was rejected by Zadkiel's girlfriend and had been watching them at her house and waited for Zadkiel to come out. Essentially, this was a case of jealousy among a teenage boy. This kind of interpersonal conflict is kind of common when you hear about these narratives around these shootings.
So when I knew the story, what happened, I feel so relieved because I know my son was a good person because I raised him like that. So yeah, I feel kind of peace.
The other thing that happened in court that day is Estela saw for the first time video evidence of the shooting. She talked about it at that trace workshop I attended.
Everybody warned me that don't go, Estela. Why you want to watch that? And my answer was, I received that body when he born. I received it in my arms, and I look at him. And they steal from me my human right to say goodbye to him that night when he died. So it was my right to watch his last minute, even if I wasn't there for him. Videos was so hard. It was like I was dying in that moment, watching how he felt. How he was running away from the first instant from him, and he following him, shoot him. But now I feel peace because in the beginning I don't want to know anything. I just want to keep myself away from, the comments. Because when you talk about your loss, they ask the age, and when you say 18, they always assume it's a gang member. That's how we have to deal with people. So sometimes you stop talking about it because that's stupid comments. But this guy don't know my son, and my son don't know him. So he was waiting outside of my son's girlfriend's house. And no matter what happened with him, if he's going to jail for the rest of his life or not, nothing is going to change for me. Nothing. So I don't look for revenge. I don't look for justice, because the way they call justice, the system, it's you catch a bad guy and that's it. But not for me, because my son is not coming back. So I prefer living in honor of him, doing things that could help another woman like me.
She talked about feeling a sense of peace, but you can hear the pain in her voice as she recounts these moments. You know, how is Estela doing now?
So she ended up creating a grief group. There was none in her area. She lives in Brighton Park. And the group grew really fast. There's a total of 7 moms, including Estela. They're on a WhatsApp group, and they talk pretty frequently. They even have a designated emoji for when someone needs extra support. So when someone sends it, they're there for them. Aside from the group, she's been picking up on other things, like taking a course on thanatology, the study of life, death, and grief, so she can understand grief better and help others. And because Zadkiel wasn't able to graduate, she decided to complete her GED in honor of him. Also, a year after his passing, she picked up on running.
I remember my first race was the hot chocolate run. I was doing the 2 miles. I was so excited about sharing this. And the people says, 2 miles, oh, that's nothing. But they don't know. Just get up from bed. For me, it's a victory. I celebrate like I was running the 15K. When I running through the finish line, I remember screaming, Zadkiel, we can do it. Zadkiel, run, Zadkiel, run. I was having so much fun. So this year, I made 5 races. But the thing is, I convinced my moms of the grief group to do a Dia de Muertos race. And they say, wow, why we don't listen to you before? I say, because this is the right time. Because you are ready now, you know? So I'm so proud of that they race with me. And they are so excited for the next year doing it since the beginning of the year. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of stuff because of him. Before, I'm doing everything for him. But now I'm doing it because of him. Now I know that my son lives through me. I want to honor his life with everything I can do. And I really, really believe that the pain and the love can coexist in me, and I can project that outside.
So 7 people participated in the Trace Storytelling Workshop, and it sounds like for a lot of them, it was a very difficult process, reliving the past, writing about it, getting edited and fact-checked, having to hear from other people. I mean, did you hear from some folks about why they chose to participate, why they wanted to do this?
I think Juan Rendon sums it up really well.
I just felt like if there was a way I could make sure that people know his story, that this is probably the best way.
Juan lost his childhood friend back in 2012 when his friend was 19. The shooting happened in Irving Park.
He might have not been my blood relative, but he was, someone I definitely miss a lot. His name was Junior Estudillo. I met Junior when I was around, I think, 10 or 11 years old. We met at Kedville Park, which is in the Humboldt Park community. The way that I met him was he was just running around, and there was kids that would pick on us. They went up to him and tried to pick on him too. And I remember him just like the kid that tried to grab him, he hit him. And then the kid was shocked that, like, oh my God, this little kid just hit me and nobody else stands up to me. The Junior ran away. He's like, I'm out of here. So we were just like, who's that kid? Who's that kid? Who's that kid? Later on, we found out that they lived maybe like 2 houses away from us. That summer, we started hanging around, we did what we usually do as kids, playing the park. So we went through, childhood through like teenage years and then late teens next to each other. But it was always an adventure. There was always like candy stores and stuff. We would grab whatever loose change we would find, put it all together, then go and buy like several bags of chips, share it all along with our other friends and my brothers and their siblings. There was a lot of kids that lived around the same area. They all knew him. He always had enough time for anybody that needed him, like his help or that wanted to like just hang out. That's what made him a really good guy. He was just there for everybody. And, until he wasn't, then we realized it's just like, man, there's something missing. Junior was 19 years old and he passed away the day before New Year's Eve. He was shot on December 30th. He passed away on December 31st. So he didn't even make it to the new year, to 2013. So the previous night on December 30th, I had gone on a date, and it didn't end too well. So little did I know that on my way back to my house, I was on the red line. He was like, fighting for his life. I went to work on December 31st, and I start looking through Facebook. I was bored at work and whatever. And I see somebody saying, hey, rest in peace, Junior. And I'm like, what does that mean? And I see another person that, that he was close friends with too. Rest in peace, Junior. We're going to miss you so much. I'm like, there's no way that we're talking about the same person. I went into the restroom and I called my brother and I was like, hey, dude, what's up with these posts saying that rest in peace, Junior? He's like, dude, he's gone. I'm like, what do you mean he's gone? He's like, dude, they shot him last night and he died. I'm like, there's no way. And he's like, nah, man, I'm with his parents right now. He's there. We're all here. And as soon as I got home, I went straight to their parents' house and I hugged his mom. And they told me, yeah, he was killed. But, we really didn't know. I didn't know the details of it until later on.
So Junior had beef with this other guy. It's not clear what it was exactly, but they had been on bad terms for a while. The guy says to Junior basically like, let's box it out. Let's settle this. Junior agrees and goes to the location with a couple of his friends. But then someone walks up to their car while they're sitting inside and they open fire. Junior was initially transported to what is now Humble Park Health. Back then, it was Norwegian American Hospital. But he was taken to Stroger because the other hospital didn't have a trauma center.
I believe if there was a trauma center around that area where it happened, he would have been alive. It would have been just another story me and him were sharing. Like, oh, man, remember when I got shot? It would have been that type of story. But unfortunately, it wasn't.
Juan writes in his essay that in Chicago city limits, there are 5 level 1 trauma centers and a 6th one that just serves kids. And they tend to be on opposite ends of the city. There were only 4 when Junior died. The new one is at the University of Chicago Medical Center that opened in 2018 after a passionate campaign by neighbors and activists calling for a trauma center to reopen after it had closed 30 years earlier. And there's some research backing up Juan's point here. People who have to travel farther to a trauma center have worse outcomes.
I mean, you talk to some moms and friends. I mean, how was Juan's experience and his retelling, his essay, maybe a little bit different as a friend than maybe from what you saw as Estella as a family member?
It's different when you're not the first person they call. Estella, obviously, her son is dead. So she has to be the one to deal with authorities, identifying the body, and being questioned. Juan wasn't the first call, but it still doesn't hurt any less.
Nothing ever felt the same anymore. it was just like a shift in time. Friendships that we had for like years slowly dissolved. It was like a linchpin of our like little community in that little 2-3 block radius. I don't feel like my family, they could have helped the way that they could, like, help unpack that trauma. My brothers were teenagers, so they were just like, they were more filled with anger than anything else. My parents really never had to lose somebody through the fault of somebody else. So I didn't really know how to process it. And, I felt like I just tucked it away. I tucked it away and it came out in different ways. I was less trusting of people, and I fell up to a certain point too with my own kids. Like I would worry about them constantly. My daughter recently went to a sleepover. She's 13, and her phone died during the course of the sleepover, and I was just like, "Oh my God, what if something happened? Oh my God," because it's just like you tend to freak out a lot more. But the main part was probably like I couldn't unpack it at that point in time. The moment that I actually like sat down and wrote it out and just thought about the situation, that's when I was just like, man, I should have just hung out with him a lot more, like I could have guided him or helped him guide, just to make the decision not to go hey, see this dude or settle it or anything like that.
Did they find the person who did this?
From what I last heard, a person was arrested. They are currently in jail, but I'm not sure how many years. Which is, at least we were able to have that. I know there's a lot of families that don't have some type of closure on that aspect. You hope for justice, but at the end of the day, is it really justice? This person leaves or gets out and like he still gets to live his life while everybody's still, thinking about Junior and stuff. So it's just, yeah. When someone is arrested for killing somebody else, I don't know if it's like you really truly consider that justice, because ultimately the person is not here. So I decided there's a lot of life out there and you have to live it. And that's what Junior would have wanted. It's just a lot of people have no idea that like this type of things go on in Chicago all the time. And news, I don't know. I would say they try to do their best job of like highlighting certain things when it comes to gun violence. But right now, what it feels like, it's just like a process line. Just, all right, we need a name, we need a date, and bam, they shut it down. They shove it off to the side for the next story. And I just want people to remember Junior as who he was, not just some statistic from 2012. He was a good son. He was a great friend, and he will never be forgotten.
When I listen to Juan, I relate in so many ways. That feeling that everything is sort of different. I have been shot at, and the paranoia that I carry with me every day is like something I can't really escape. Pretty early on when we started the podcast, I had a friend, Tim Elin, who was a Chicago firefighter who was killed leaving a birthday party in West Pullman. He ended up dying like months after. I believe his niece was killed. 3 other people were wounded. And he actually shares a birthday with a great friend of mine, Gabby, who is also the wife of my best friend, Darius. And we were at her birthday party this past year. And Darius and Tim were friends from childhood, and all of Darius's childhood friends, we went to grammar school or high school here. And there's just this moment in the midst of this like celebration. We're all happy, where all of us are standing there together. And you feel that collective emptiness just sort of come over the group. That like there's always this feeling that like someone else is supposed to be here. And so, I mean, listening through these first two stories, I think one of the things that becomes so clear that like statistics and like the media cycle in the investigation cycle, they never can capture is just like how forever changed people are after these experiences, and how oftentimes, maybe more than not, that this sensationalization, this baseball card statistician that people like to play does more harm than good in folks' healing process. I mean, Michelle, after attending this meeting and talking to Estella and Juan, what did you take away from this experience?
Everyone in this workshop had a unique story. They had different relationships. The shootings happened at different times. Their loved ones were unique people. But there is something about being in this room with this group of people who all understood exactly what everyone else was going through. And some things just came up again and again. The assumptions made about gang affiliation, as if that explains or gives reason to the shooting. The shortcomings of our health system. You know, Juan wasn't the only one in the group who felt like a loved one's death could have been prevented. And just how opaque and difficult and insensitive the investigation process can be. And how frustrating it is to not have information about what happened. One last story I want to share is from Jessica. She's a journalist, and she used the Freedom of Information Act to get documents related to the shooting that killed her brother and sister.
I learned about the relationship the offender had with my siblings, because I didn't know this person existed till she killed them. I learned that they historically just hadn't gotten along, but, you know, it was a neighbor. And I think people tend to be killed by people they know. So it made me wonder what happened before. Like, if I could go back in time, you know, and I could say, you know, don't move into that building. There's this person upstairs from you. Or were there interventions that should have happened?
She talks about reading the testimony the shooter gave to police and learning about how the neighbor had argued with her siblings about noise.
It answered questions, which was what I was looking for, just sort of the curiosity part of it. But it hurt my feelings because it also portrayed my siblings in a bad light. Like, were they as bad as she said they were? Because I don't know them to be that way. Like, what does all of those things mean that you would go shoot someone? Obviously, that's an unnecessary escalation. Did she tell them that they were too loud and they ignored, like, you know, right? It made me feel like, did they play a role in their murder? Which is crazy. That's a crazy thought process to have, because the only voice I have is hers. I don't have theirs. And I don't have anyone on this earth who can say what their side of it was.
Jessica's siblings were killed over a decade ago, and she's still trying to make sense of what happened. Like you said at the top, we see these headlines with these numbers, and then we see another and another. But for people who are actually affected, this one moment shapes them for the rest of their lives. And Estella summed that up.
Everybody said that when something bad happened to you, that the time healed you, right? But no. In these situations, the time is getting worse because the holidays is coming up. And I feel more heavy in my heart that he's not here. So that is not true that time heals everything. That is not true. Not for us, at least.
And so when we talk about reducing gun violence in Chicago, I think hearing these stories really crystallizes how much of that conversation is kind of just noise. Like, these are the voices that really matter.
Michelle, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to go to this session, to meet with these people, to bring us these stories. I know everybody listening appreciates it.
Thanks, Jacoby.
Again, this was all done in partnership with The Trace, a nonprofit news organization covering gun violence in America. Check the link in our show notes to see links to all of the essays published as part of this storytelling workshop in Chicago. One of the best ways you can support the CityCast Chicago and Hey Chicago team is signing up to join our membership. Again, not only can you support us, but you help other people find and connect with the podcast. You can do that now by going to membership.citycast.fm. If you're already a member, we see you. We appreciate you. Seriously, we couldn't do this work without all of y'all. And this week only, if you sign up, you will get our brand new tote bag. We reworked the design a little bit. We going with the all black with the zipper. So yeah, head to the link in our show notes. Of course, I can't let you go without some good news. You can catch me tonight at Lincoln Hall for my final Moth Story Slam of the year. You can come watch, or you can sign up to tell a 5-minute story. The theme is silver linings. Either way, I hope to see you in the building. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.